everybody. You guys ready to shake things up a little bit? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is stand up for me for a second, if you don't mind. You've been sitting for a while in stasis, and part of what happens to our bodies when we're sitting for a while is we lose control of the other part of our body. So one of the things I want you to think about as you read this, the augmented and virtualized human, some musings about where we're headed and why, is I'm going to take things in a little bit of a different direction for you guys. I want you to have a really strong realization of this indelible link between this part of our body and this part of our body. Just the act of standing up has changed this presentation dynamic a little bit. So my name is Ted. I'm going to ask you all, and you can do this all at once. What is your names? That's a lot of data, right? You all just threw a lot of data at me, and now you have to somehow interpolate that. And that's an interesting moment that you all experienced. Now we're going to try another little experiment. As Kim mentioned, I'm a futurist at a very large movie studio, 20th Century Fox. And we are one of those big clients that works with Paul's technology and Technicolor MPC, the Mills technology. And we're those guys that spend billions of dollars to enable all this stuff to become real. And we're honored to be a part of that world. So as a futurist, I'm going to make a prediction. We'll see if I'm at 100% correct saturation. I'm going to predict that everybody in this room has something called a smartphone. Correct? If so, take it out, hold it up. Kim, are you still around? Can you help me for a minute? Or did you run away? If not, I can get somebody else to help me. Come back for a second, Kim, if you're still here. If not, I might have Paul come up. Come up for a second, Paul. Right? Everybody's got one? Now, I'm going to say that this is not just a smartphone. This is actually your personal mobile robot. And we're going to talk about that for a minute. We're going to show you what it feels like in a second by a short experiment. So what I'm going to ask you to do is look at your neighbor and swap phones with them. Now, I've done this a lot of times with a lot of different audiences, some very large. Now take that new phone that you have and put it in your pocket or your purse. Thanks, Paul. You can go sit down. Keep my phone. Okay. You can all sit down now. This is a very, very typical reaction that I get. Now start to feel what's going on with your humanity, with your human nature. The fact that you are linked to that little device in a way that maybe you didn't think of day to day, but trust me, you're thinking about it now. Now that it's no longer in your possession, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. So see how long you can hold out. It's kind of an interesting experiment. Here's something else I want you to think about. I told you it was going to be a little different. I warned you, right? If you, let's say, ended up in prison tonight for some odd reason, it's more likely that that's going to happen to me than you, but for some odd reason. Other than like your home phone as a kid that you grew up and maybe one friend, would you know how to dial anybody else's phone number without your robot? Do you know the digits of 20 or 30 people that you would call to rescue you? Probably not, right? Your robot has taken over that function. If you were going to, right, it has a mapping of all that. We no longer use phones the way we used to. If you were going to drive anywhere today, when was the last time, and be authentic and think about this, the last time you drove without punching in navigation, even to a place that you know how to get to? Because you want to see what your computer robot, what Waze or Google Maps tells you is the best route. You've given up some control to this virtualized, augmented world. I'm trying to draw some real-world parables that kind of make this all lock in your head, right? So this is a really good quote, and I think this is valuable for this conference in a lot of ways. So even if you're on the right track, you will get run over if you just sit there. That's from a famous movie cowboy, and interestingly enough, if you do a little research on him, amazing technologist named Will Rogers. Movie guy, but did a lot more. He was also the mayor of Beverly Hills for a little while. Fascinating guy. It's a really good quote, something to think about as we kind of go through the next 15 minutes of our lives here. So here's some statistics. This is kind of the only thing you'll have to read about my presentation. The rest will be sort of pictures and thoughts. This is from research back in 2013, that 4 out of 5 smartphone users check their phones within the first 15 minutes of waking up in the day. I would postulate now, 2017, it's probably the first 2 or 3 minutes, right? You take it out. Now I've got Paul's. You take it out and you check it. It's usually sitting by your bed, right? So she's kind of happy about it. They're a little less, happy, and they're getting a little less happy about that, right? 80% of the people, I would postulate that this is well over 90%, probably 97% now, say it's the first thing you do in the morning. Think about it. Raise your hand if that's kind of the first thing you do in the morning is check your phone, right? That's a robotic function that you've allowed to happen in your life. Almost 80% in 2013 say they have their personal robot, I've got Paul's personal robot, on their body, on their waking being for all but 2 hours a day. I would say in 2017, it's probably about 12 to 16 minutes a day while you're up. The only time you don't have it is probably when you're in the shower. Think about it, right? So what does all this mean? Where are we going with all this? I want to show you this little video. Some of you know this video. This is kind of famous. All right, watch this for a second. It's got
one more
sound.
now.
Oh, there you go.
Better angle. Oh, check it. Did that come out okay?
That's the best one of the 300 pictures I've taken of
Look,
myself today.
Every girl in the picture is locked into her phone.
Oh, Lord.
Every single one is dialed in. Welcome to parenting in 2015. They're all just completely transfixed by the technology. David Peralta. Oh, hold on. I'd take a selfie with the hot dog. Selfie with the churro. Selfie just of a selfie.
Okay. So that's fun to watch, right? Those adorable young women are showing us a part of humanity and a part of human nature. But here's what's really interesting. There's a little more to that story that you're not seeing. What really was happening there is the reporters on that baseball broadcast were making fun of those lovely young ladies, but actually they were the ones from a commercial reason that actually kicked that off.
And while they're, maybe they'll tweet us their fan photo, BB. Now's the time,
Right?
fans. Get on the Twitter with a hashtag.
They were asked to be a part of that behavior. So everybody was making fun of it, but should we really be making fun of? The folks that asked them. This stuff, right? When all of these people are at this sporting event, they're not really at this sporting event. They're at an augmented version of this sporting event. If you go behind the stage here, it looks a lot like this. It's a fully augmented universe that we're using with all these monitors and all these control panels and all of these things to create our version of reality. And it's an important thing to think about. This is a picture of a Starbucks from last week. Look at that. If you're old enough as I am, now I'm this weird guy, you've already noticed, I'm like a 16-year-old boy trapped in a 50-year-old body, right? But this is a fascinating comment on humanity, on what we do with these robotic devices that have sucked our life into them, and we use them in social spaces. So here's the question. Will we go here next? Is this what's going to happen? Part of the answer is yes. But part of the answer and part of the job of being the futurist is sort of to understand how to expect the unexpected. This is actually relatively expected. And this isn't exactly where I think it's going to go. This is what I call the BOF, box on face syndrome. This is where, in virtual reality, and this is not a knock on what this is, but this is remarkable stuff, but the humanity of this is actually fundamentally and functionally wrong. The idea of putting something on our face and kind of locking out the world is one way to sort of move into the future, but I don't think it's a long-term vision of the future. And if you ask people that are way more important like me, one of the guys that invested billions in this is a guy named Mark Zuckerberg, and ask him, and he's been very public about this, he doesn't think this is the future either, and they're already working on a different vision of that future. This is the mobile side of it, but still essentially box on face, right? We're at an interesting point where this is starting to become commercialized, it's starting to become viable, there's a lot of content coming out, companies like ours in the entertainment space are experimenting with these, but the point is for this audience, this is not actually the future. This is the past, and this is today. So let me give you a little background as to why this sort of maybe makes sense to me, and you'll be like, why would they invite this guy up on stage? So really, I'm a futurist, right? Well, what gives me the right to be up here? How come you guys aren't up here and I'm over there? So I had to think about this once on stage for an audience, and I actually kind of came to an odd conclusion as to how this has happened in my life. I grew up here, more specifically here, which I refer to very simply as the funnel of crazy, okay? So every time you hear a news story that says, and in this unique little tidbit, you're like, you know where this is going. Okay, it's going to happen in Florida. If it's nuts, it's going to happen in Florida. That's where I grew up. As a little kid, we moved from Brooklyn, as this funny little Jewish kid, and got dropped into this in Florida in the early 70s. It was a little scary. It was a little racist. It was nothing like what you think Central Florida is now. 1 year later, as a young boy, my entire world turned around, and it became this. And I grew up in a world of dynamic, fundamental, constant change. I saw one world completely transform in front of my eyes, and I lived it for a big part of my life. I literally lived in the future, and I got to experiment it, and I got to be a part of it. And I got to get very, very comfortable with the idea of change being more interesting than stasis. New things being more interesting than things that are hanging. Which is what, when you guys were talking about all these new things and game engines and stuff, this is what inspires me today and why we're doing so many interesting things in our world at 20th Century Fox. So that's a little background. And then I went on to kind of help build these things. I was the first employee of this camera company that Paul used to shoot that stuff for show, which is amazing, and built a lot of stuff that enabled an industry. And these were all projects that were very disruptive and pushing a big rock up a big hill until suddenly it started rolling down on its own, and I was like, okay, I'm on to the next thing. And that's what I got a chance to do. So I've been a lucky cat in that way. Now, I want to talk to you about something that I think you'll reflect on, and this will be important when you start to understand where I think we're going with entertainment. So you've heard the word immersion a few times today. You hear a lot of people talking about immersive entertainment, right? When you get immersed in a story. And I want to draw a slightly different dynamic of where I think entertainment is actually headed for a big portion of this dynamic, is something that I call spatial entertainment, which is actually different than immersion. If you go into a giant movie screen, movie theater, you can get immersed in the story. It's a wonderful experience. But if you can use, this is why I had you get up and why I had you transfer your phones. By the way, just so you don't forget, now good time to give your phones back. Because it would be really problematic if you walked out of here without your robot, right? Spatial entertainment is different than immersive entertainment because you get your physicality into it. It starts to become more real. This is why we call it virtual reality, as opposed to just virtual looking at stuff. So this is an interesting point in time. I presume a lot of you, or if you have kids, you've watched your kids play something called the Wii, the Nintendo Wii. This product was much more transformational than people give it credit for, because up until then, video games were essentially use a controller and you moved around on stuff. But when the Nintendo Wii came out, they started to give you the first glimpse at spatial entertainment, where you weren't playing a game anymore. Grandma was bowling in the living room, right? You were playing tennis in your rec room. You were playing baseball. You were playing golf. You were virtualizing entertainment in a spatial way where you started to feel space. But there was still a layer that didn't fully get you there. You were watching a screen in front of you, right? And you were all wondering, when would spatial entertainment take that next turn? So that's kind of what's happening now, right? Virtual reality is not a new thing by any stretch of the imagination. It has been around for a long time, and my theme park background and this whole life living inside a theme park and understanding spatial entertainment has been very core to how I do my work at Fox. Because a ride moves you through time and space. You don't just sit and watch it, you are actually involved in it. Your body is involved in it, right? So if you look at these articles, that one's, what does it say? 1998, VR goes mass market. This was the first turn at the wheel. Didn't quite happen because of technology, but more because humanity actually wasn't quite ready for it. Now we're much, much closer, and that point that I was giving you about this augmented little beast that lives in your pocket, this robotic little beast, is a big part of why we are actually softened up for this. We're now ready. We're more ready to move into this type of entertainment than we were 20, 25 years ago. Does anybody disagree with that? Good, making sure I'm still being relevant here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our projects, some of our swings at bat. What we're doing in this thing called the Fox Innovation Lab at 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles is we've been experimenting with forms of entertainment and learning to be self-critical. This was the first thing we did a few years back, an uncommon, sort of interesting choice for our first swing. It was an independent movie, Searchlight, small movie that we did a virtual reality 360 experience for. It had two major stars in it, Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern, and it became a hit. We took it to Sundance, we took it to CES, and that year at CES was like 3 years ago, it became the story at CES. It's like people were like, enough with 4K monitors. We know we can do 4K monitors. What Fox is doing in this new lab that they started is actually experimenting with new types of storytelling. It was our first swing at bat. Then a year later, we went back and did this. And this was a much more ambitious project that we worked with a bunch of different technology companies and game engine companies to make something that is a full, immersive, game-like narrative story experience. And we put it inside of a motion chair, and it became sort of like a theme park experience, except you could take it anywhere. It's now out in mass distribution for this small but growing market on all the different platforms for VR, which is the Oculus Rift, the PlayStation VR, and the Vive. And there's more coming. So people often ask that haven't had a chance to do it, what does it look like? Why do we do this? And I'm going to show you what I mean by spatial entertainment. Remember the Wii reference, and then watch this little clip. And you'll see why we think this is interesting stuff.
So I'm not supposed to be doing anything right now, right?
Cool.
I'm gonna give you controllers.
Oh, sorry.
That is so freaky, and by that I mean awesome.
Oh my god! Ah, this is so cool! I'm in a spacesuit! Whoa. Mom, I'm Matt Damon.
I'm really bad at this.
Oh. Oh, hi.
This is the most awesome thing that's ever happened to me.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
That's it. How was it?
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so that gives you a sense. Do you see what's happening? They're not just watching it, they're living it, right? They're involved in it. And this sort of glee and joy that happens with this kind of entertainment is different than other entertainment. But we're still on the early side of this curve. We're still just a few years into this current iteration of virtual reality starting to become something, and we're using tools that are actually relatively primitive to achieve the objectives. It's going to get a lot better, and it's going to force multiply pretty quickly as we start to kind of get over these thresholds. So in the evolution of our world, we've created a new division of the company that we call Fox Next. So now, right along with Fox News and Fox Sports and Fox Television, FNG Group, and Fox Movies, we have a group that's focused on gaming in all of its forms, location-based entertainment, aka theme park-style entertainment, and virtual reality and augmented reality. And we think this is a great next step. We have 2 projects that are announced. We've got another 5 or 6 in the works that are secret, and we're working on a bunch of original content. We're really starting to explore what this business can be. And we're starting to experiment. We're working with all our partners like Technicolor and MPC. So we just released yesterday the first piece of Alien, which supports the movie that's coming out, and it's from the point of view of the birthed alien. It's quite horrifying. You can see it on Rift and Gear VR today, if you want. And then we're working on a very, very ambitious piece around Planet of the Apes for a VR experience around Planet of the Apes. We also support all types of other parts of our entities at Fox. So we're kind of this sort of dragonfly that helps everybody try and succeed and work on things. Right here in DC, there's Nat Geo, which is now part of Fox, and we did this really interesting piece with Obama. We did a comedy piece with Sunny. We're doing stuff with Fox Sports, with creating these live sort of man cave, fan cave experiences inside VR. And we did this really, really interesting piece around 24 Legacy that the production team from 24 got deeply involved in and made this really interesting, immersive piece. So we're kind of touching a lot of things, which is I just wanted to bring up. That's a little bit of the plug of what we do. Now think about some of these dynamics and remember what's in your pocket today, right? And what you use more than probably anything else to move through your data life. This is kind of an interesting, I just kind of hunted around to sort of think about how quickly change is. And these are really good examples from the 70s to the mid-2000s, right? As we move through technology, here's another good image of that. As we move through the technology curve and things are dynamically changing. And we're using different tools. You guys are pointing, remember these things? Yeah, you're like, yeah, remember that? That actually wasn't all that long ago, right? The next step is potentially coming. And actually, this conference is very, very smart that they brought some folks doing what I think is the next smart step. So are we going to go here next? This is when we evolve out of the box on face. This is a more powerful, more evolved tool that I think is going to be the lightning rod and start to really push these worlds together in really, really interesting dynamic ways. When you start to think about this device that you use a lot, right? I know you use it a lot. Some of you are using it to take a picture of this thing right now, right? and you think about this thing called the 20% rule. Do you guys know what the 20% rule is? This is the 20% rule. You're all day long walking around the real world looking down at this thing at a 20-degree angle, right? So when you think about when it gets right enough, when it gets more correct, more nimble, more logical to wear it rather than hold it or pseudo-wear it, like we're pretending to wear it all the time. We're holding it up to our face and we're kind of monkeying around with it, right? When it gets proper enough that it makes more sense to do that than this, that will happen a day when you will leave your iPhone or Android phone at home and you will not have the holy shit moment, I left my phone at home. You will not freak out because you'll have something better. You'll have something more evolved. You'll have something that can give you a universe and give you a world. And I'm not going to remember the name of the company, but they're right over there and they're doing some really interesting stuff. And I recommend everybody go see it before the end of the day, showing you what that interface can look like. When you can wear an interface where suddenly this restricted piece of real estate, this little piece of shard of glass that we try and imagine will be big, when we put it on our face, it can actually be big. It can be gigantic, and you can have multiple versions and multiple windows, and you can start to break through some of the barriers of technology that we're living in now. So we've done some really interesting things. We're working with all kinds of different companies from a studio standpoint. We're working very closely with Microsoft on their HoloLens project, and they've got a lot of initiatives there. We're working very closely with Magic Leap, which you've probably heard of. It's a very interesting, sort of stealthy company. I spent a lot of time down there. And we're working very closely with a company called ODG, which is an augmented reality system. And Fox made a very big investment and has actually been guiding some of their progress and suggesting things that they should be doing to help in the entertainment and wellness and good for the world space. So here's a question for you all. Who would say they're kind of ready for this? Are you ready to wear something for like a couple hours a day? So like half of you? Let me take you one more step to the future. This is where it gets a little scary, a little dystopian. If I could tell you that at some point in time there'll be a patch, like a little Nicorette patch, you'll be able to put it on your temple. You'll be able to take it off whenever you want, we hope, we think, right? But you won't have to wear anything. There will be no physical embodiment of this. It'll just be this thing that you put on, and you will have a world that comes to life. It sounds like science fiction. It is not science fiction. There are people working on this kind of stuff right now. And I can give you lots of other examples of things that will go right onto our retinas, various experimentations of drawing light onto our eyes in ways that are really unique and really special. So I'm pretty ready, but I'm an odd duck, right, as you can tell. So this is augmented today, right? Just another example of all the things we do as humans today that are softening us, that are getting ready. Every time you watch a sporting event on Fox or any other network in the world, you're seeing an augmented version of that football game. We're drawing lines all over the field. If you're a PGA Tour fan, you are watching this TrackMan stuff to see where the ball is going. Every sport, and of course, Pokemon Go needs no introduction, right? But it's not really AR yet. It's mobile AR-like. But when you get to wear it, and it's no longer this restricted space, it's a monster win. So these are things that just sort of set the stage for where we're headed with the technology sphere. I'm going to wrap up by showing you a couple of videos from my friends down at Magic Leap. This one is a simulation, and they actually got a little bit of flack for this because they were like, well, that's not really real. Weta created this like artificial fantasy thing. And what I would be telling people, because I've been there a number of times, I said, no, even though this is a simulation, this is exactly what it's like. So watch this for like 30 seconds. Okay? So you're like, yeah, I get it, but that's not really what it's like, right? Well, guess what? This video is, and it actually says it in their little disclaimer there, this is actually shot through their tech with a traditional camera. So look at how close it is to what their simulation was from Weta. It's pretty fascinating. And what's cool about this little conference is you can see a HoloLens version of that right over there, right behind that black wall, right behind that black curtain. So I recommend you go check it out. Because there's a lot of people experimenting with a user interface, a productivity interface, that is suddenly transparent and everywhere when you wear it. It can be as big or small as you want. You can have multiple things working. So think about your desktop computer, your laptop computer, your mobile phone. Imagine you could virtualize that and remove its physical embodiment, remove the restriction of the fact that it's a physical thing.
The New Zealander Edmund Hillary got his first mail and congratulatory telegrams from George Lowe, a fellow countryman and expedition colleague. Just 35 miles from Kathmandu, capital of Nepal, Hillary and Tenzing were welcomed and congratulated by their fellow members of the expedition.
So this goes on for a little while. You can hunt this down on the web if you want and see how they do it. But this is really the real thing. This is what it actually looks like. So it's not all that secretive. Like, it's really happening. And this is what they're doing. So we're working with 3 or 4 different companies that are doing experiments in this vein. So what I really do is I have this really unique job at the studio where I get to explore sort of the dark edges, where the cobwebs are and where this cool stuff might be hanging out. It never happens in the middle. It always happens on the edges first, and then it starts to sort of find its centrist world. So my advice to all of you, which I give to everybody that's interested in what I do and looking to explore new things, is be bold, be brave, take risks. It's all fine. Be willing to explore the real edges of what's out there, because you just never know what you might find. That's what we're up to at Fox, and that's what I do every day. So thanks.